It would seem that Sportpesa and Betin are out of business as a result of having their licenses revoked. But there's a much deeper story in this latest development, which I will share with you shortly. But first, let us go to the shocker of the week. The Tanzanian Foreign Minister, Bwana Palamagamba Kabudi, shocked the world when in an interview with the BBC, he let it slip that journalist Azori Gwanda, ambaye alipotea karibu miaka miwili iliyopita, hayuko hai, ameaga dunia. Now, Professor Kabudi later denied and said that he had been quoted out of context. And he said that he did not know, and the government of Tanzania was not aware of the whereabouts of this journalist. Now, unfortunately for the good professor, this is not the days of the newspapers, where you could easily say a journalist had misquoted you. These are the days of instant replays, of video clips appearing in the public domain on YouTube. And therefore, many people who are able to take in the interview seem to be convinced that actually Bwana Kabudi made a blunder. He just revealed too much, unfortunately. And that the government of Tanzania may know precisely what happened to this journalist and the circumstances that led to his disappearance and death. We may be looking at the biggest blunder of the century in Africa. Now, unknown to many younger Kenyans, what is currently happening in Tanzania is not new. This reminds many of us older Kenyans of the 80s when Daniel Toroitich arap Moi was in power, and the human rights record of his government came into sharp focus, and people asking questions. Now, at about that time, we had a foreign minister in Kenya called Dr. John Robert Ouko. Ouko had been a diplomat most of his life, and he had gained quite a reputation, which many in diplomatic circles envied. And that is why it was a surprise to some when he suddenly became the strongest defender of the dictatorial government of Daniel Toroitich arap Moi. Now, not too long ago, Professor Kabudi was a respected human rights lawyer. In fact, he's an author of a book titled, wait for this one, Human Rights Jurisprudence in East Africa, a comparative study of fundamental rights and freedoms of the individuals in Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda. Now, if you take in the BBC interview, the controversial BBC interview, where the good professor was questioned about human rights in Tanzania, you will notice very quickly that his body language is all over the place. And although he's not as eloquent and as believable as Robert Ouko was in the 80s, is as enthusiastic as Ouko was at that time, if not more, in defending the government of Dr. John Pombe Magufuli. Wow, it's amazing how the more things change, the more they remain the same. It is amazing that the good book says there's nothing new under the sun. Because Tanzania right now is precisely what Kenya was in the 80s. In the 80s, when we had a president whom people had to sing praises for all day, or else dire consequences. Because in those days, the press in Kenya, and I was a member of the press at that time, lived in as much fear, if not more, as the press in Tanzania are living right now. In my view, it matters little whether it is true that the good professor, the foreign minister of Tanzania, was quoted out of context or not. Because this issue is definitely going to be around with us for quite some time. Because international human rights bodies have gotten involved. Indeed, I would not be surprised if this whole manenos ends up with the professor resigning or being sacked from his post. Because this interview, whose objective was clearly to clean up the bad image of the John Pombe Magufuli government, ended up doing exactly the opposite. More so because of this slip-up, where the foreign minister said very clearly that Azori Gwanda was not the only person to disappear at that time and end up dead. He said that in very plain English. Anyway, let's move back home and into this big issue involving Spotpesa and soccer fans. Now the question Kenyans need to ask themselves right now, why did the government take such drastic measures, as in revoking the licenses of the two major betting companies, Betin and Spotpesa? More so when the African Nations Cup in Cairo is coming to its end. It's coming to its most exciting climax, with the semi-finals and the finals. And not only that, the pay bill number used for betting was frozen, meaning that anybody with money there would lose it. And it was only after Safaricom pointed out to the government that actually there was a very high possibility that the company would face massive legal suits, that the government now decided to give everybody 24 hours, only 24 hours, to withdraw their money. And then that pay bill number or pay bill account will be completely frozen. No activity whatsoever. What really triggered such a harsh, drastic action from the government? And yet we are told, for instance, a company like Betin has paid in the region of 3 billion in taxes since they started operations. Meaning that Spotpesa have even paid more. And of course that is very serious revenue for the government. So whatever the issue is, the government is willing to sacrifice all those billions in taxes that they would have received. This is all very mysterious. However, I want to point out something to you, in case you didn't already know. The government has very recently, through the Central Bank of Kenya, warned Kenyans about online lenders. And we also know that a lot of these online lenders have been lending money to people who end up using that money to place bets on Spotpesa or Betin. And even more significant, we know that in the past, in other countries, money launderers have used betting companies to hide their activities. Because what happens is they give money to high rollers, and other people placing small bets, and even the employees. And then this money goes towards bets. But actually what happens is that it ends up being returned to the money launderers as legitimate money. Because when you launder money, what you're trying to do is to clean the money, show that it came from legitimate sources. We also know that the government has been very closely monitoring movement of large sums of money ever since it was announced that the old Kenya shillings 1,000 notes will no longer be legal tender shortly, which was a move obviously targeted at people with massive amounts of cash, which are ill-gotten from corruption. Now, with that information, all you need to do is to join the dots. With that information I've just given you, things begin to make plenty of sense, where they did not before. Now, before I go, I just want to make a very important announcement. A lot of you have responded very positively to the special offer I've had for the weekly intelligence briefings, and especially my latest sizzler on the Lamada meeting, the so-called video and audio that Dennis Itumbi wanted to play in camera. What the latest weekly intelligence briefings does is to give you an idea of what may be contained in those videos, alleged videos and audios. Now my offer, where we're giving people membership to the weekly intelligence briefings at 50% discount, was supposed to have ended yesterday, Friday at midnight. Well, the good news now is that we have extended it to Sunday. There's been complaints, and actually quite a number of people have pointed out that most of our subscribers and most of the people who would be interested in such information are freer during weekends. During work days, it's a hassle for them to look at this offer and even try to take action. And therefore, we have extended it to Sunday, midnight Kenyan time. It will not be extended beyond that. So you can take advantage of this extension and become a member of weekly intelligence briefings and get this highly sensitive information. And quite an eye-opener to understand what is really going on, what is really going down behind the scenes in Kenya, and especially in connection to that controversial Lamada meeting. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.